It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That's a brand new tune from a band called Rated X, from an album called Rated X. That one is called This Is Who I Am. And on the phone right now is a guy that definitely knows who he is. It's the one, the only, the legend himself, Joe Lynn Turner. Joe, how are you, man?
I'm good, Chris. How are you guys?
Excellent, man. Well, Joe, gotta tell you, man. You are a guy that is very consistent in your presentation, but at the same time, you have always jumped into diverse projects to kind of show off the different elements of yourself. This is no exception. This is a very, very different from the rest of your catalog, but at the same time familiar because you're in it.
I have to agree. You hit the nail right on the head with that. I really believe that this is a little bit left of right or left of center or whatever, and I love it because I get to sing the way I want to sing. I think I found some new timbre to the voice, etc. I'm really having a blast, especially this late in my career, and I believe in this record so much. The guys did such a great job on it. It's pound for pound, cut for cut, a really strong record.
Sure. Well, Joe, talk a little bit about how this project came together. Certainly it's it's being billed as a supergroup, and I don't know if that's necessarily positive or not, because supergroups have a way of not always hitting. But this, it just seems like, from an artistic standpoint anyway, and that's how I would judge this. I would say it is a very cool melding of three. I don't know very much about Carl, and I'll get to that in a minute, but the other three, certainly it's a very unique melding of ideas and artistic experience.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That sounds like a good review. It started with Frontiers asking me, Serafino Perugino up there, I know Serafino a long time, got a long relationship, and he just said, look, we need a bunch of notables to put around you to showcase your voice, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but I happened to be on tour at the time, so I kind of let it die for a few months because touring is obviously the utmost importance right now. That's a revenue stream that we all need to feed the families. Mm-hmm. So I come back to the States for about 2 weeks in R&R, and Carmine calls me from L.A. He's up in the L.A. offices of Frontiers, and he says, hey, you know that band you want to do? And I go, yeah. He goes, I'm in. And I said, great. And right there and then I started to take this thing very seriously. And I said, cool, let's see, bass player we need. And I go, Tony Franklin? And he goes, let's call him right now. And I mean, that day we called Tony and we kind of double teamed him, and Tony said, well, sounds a little interesting and whatnot, but what? We said, this is going to be great. He said, all right. Let's take it further. So we did. He was in. And with that, we needed guitar players. And we actually went through a few guitar players on this thing until we arrived at Carl Cochran, because Serafino wanted notables. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I don't necessarily subscribe to supergroups. I think it's a cheesy word. But at the same time, and I wouldn't call this a supergroup, I'd say this is a band of extremely profound seasoned musicians who come together to make a brilliant record. Not a supergroup. We don't like the term either. So with that, we had Bruce Kulick from KISS, and we said, Bruce, if you're going to do this, we need a commitment. And he said, look, I'm with Grand Funk Railroad. That's my bread and butter. We don't know how this record's going to do. And, of course, we all believed in it and said, well, we're going to make a great record, and it's going to do great. So, whatever, but we understand and respect your point of view. Mm-hmm. Okay, so out went Bruce. So then we said, who else is around? So I called Doug Aldrich, but he had 3 projects going at that time, and, Revolution Saints, and 2 other, Steamroller and Burning Rain, and I just said, wow, you're way too busy, man.
Sure.
So there was Doug, and I wish him the best. Then we said, let's see who's left. We said, Jeff Watson. He was in Mother's Army with us guys, with me and Carmine. He's a brilliant, virtuosic guitar player. And we called Jeff, and he said, sure, sounds good. But I got to tell you, my studio is my revenue stream, and I produce, and I do this, and I do that, and it takes up all my time. And we said, okay, well, here's a couple of tracks. Let's see what you can do to it. Well, we gave him 2 tracks, but it took him like a month to even come close to finishing them. And we just said, look, we can't do this. We have a timeline. It's not like we can take 2 years to do a record.
Right.
There's budgets, and, nowadays It's a different paradigm in the music business.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, look, so we had to leave Jeff as well, with all good feelings. And we just said, okay, I turned around and said, look, I got the guy. I got a guy right here that plays on my solo stuff, plays live with me, writes with me. He's killer. He's perfect for this. He knows exactly. He's got the shredding. He's got the blues. He's got the sex in his playing. He's got everything. He's got the look. And that's Carl Cochran. So we said, okay, let's throw him 2 tracks. He did 2 tracks in a weekend and killed us, knocked us down. We said, this is the missing combination of Rated X. This is exactly what we're looking for. You can hear it on the record. However, tragedy struck about 7 tracks in, and Carl suffered a stroke.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, we believe it was a basketball accident. He plays some heavy, hard basketball. He always has. He grew up like this in the parks and stuff of Irvington, New Jersey, and these guys play hard. Mm-hmm. There's some serious players there. And somebody must have went out for a ball and came down with an elbow into his carotid artery on the neck, which created a blood clot. He suffered some migraines for about 2 months, and he's one of these guys that doesn't like doctors. And he let it go. The migraine subsided, but then, lo and behold, the clot reached his brain, and he suffered a stroke.
Wow.
So he's paralyzed on the right side of the body.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. You better believe it. I was out on tour with Alice Cooper at the time in Germany in a project called Rock Meets Classic, which is a 40-piece orchestra behind. We had the guys from Uriah Heep, Kim Wilde, Midge Ure, myself, and Alice. And it was a great lineup. And we were out on tour with these guys, and Carmine Skyped me and told me the news with Carl, and I was in disbelief for about a week. Mm-hmm. And crying my eyes out, because not only is he an amazing guitar player and a guitar star waiting to happen, but he's a good friend of mine.
Sure.
A best friend. Mm-hmm. So heartbreaking, to say the least, but when you have a man down, the team pulls together, and we went forward. We needed another virtuoso guitar player, and I knew Niccolo Kotzev from Brazen Abbott. He came forward, and he finished the tracks. Very compassionate guy. He asked for no money. He understood the problems we were having. We were way out of budget. We needed somebody to finish this record, and he did an excellent job. So we may and probably will use Niccolo on our European tours. I'm not sure what will happen here in the States yet, but we're going to probably start there in the late spring, early summer.
Okay. Well,
and that's the status right now.
Sure. Going through a process like that, Joe, how difficult is it to keep both a positive attitude and the momentum going? I mean, obviously you start having the illness is a big blow, but I mean, even also with the trying different guitar players and not finding the mix and whatnot, it's got to be hard to keep driving forward and believing in a project that a project's going to come to fruition to the ideas and expectations that you had when it started.
Absolutely, all that went through our minds, because we knew exactly what goals we wanted to set with this band, what kind of standards the music had to have, and what type of music we wanted to do. Performance, our arrangements show that we are a performance band. What I mean by that is everybody plays as an individual, yet they are collectively together. Mm-hmm. It's quite amazing. So yeah, we were faced with all of this, but that's the thing with a team. When one guy goes down, when you got one man down, the rest of the team steps up. And it was an inspiration in a way, through the tragedy, to make this thing the best possible record we could. Niccolo knew that, and he added his guitar skills to that, came up shining, and the rest of the album that we finished after that, I think everybody just rose to the occasion. And we did this for Carl. We said, look, we've really got to have a winner here. This was an added impetus. Chris, this was added power. And it's a shame that it has to happen this way, but that's what happens even on great football teams. You get a man down, everybody steps up, and that's what happens here.
Definitely.
So Carl is now in recovery. We actually have a legitimate benefit foundation for not only him. We started with him, but it's going to be for a lot of rockers who face these kind of problems. It's called rocknrecovery.net. And we're actually doing another. We had one benefit already at the Iridium in New York City, which was very successful. And we're having another one tomorrow night here in northern New Jersey, because I'm from New Jersey, so is Carl. We've got a lot of guys stepping up. Pat Travers is flying in. A whole bunch of people. Eddie Trunk is going to host it.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I can't even tell you about a huge concert that's going to be held by two incredibly prominent bands. I'm not allowed to say the names, so just be on the lookout on N, that's the letter N, recovery.net, rocknrecovery.net, and we'll give you the news pretty soon.
Excellent.
But, and Carl is making great progress for anybody out there who's really interested about this, because, and we hope you all are, because all of the positive vibes and all of the positive feelings that the fans have sent and that the players and musicians and rock stars have sent is just helping his recovery. He's using conventional methods as well as holistic methods, and he is coming back 100%. It's a very tough thing to get over, but I think he'll be an inspiration for all of us.
Right. Well, that's great, man. It's great to hear that he is recovering. Well, let's talk a little bit about the record itself, Joe. We'll go to Happier Times, where we can actually talk about the finished product, which I'm sure you're proud of.
Very proud.
It's a very strong record, and it one of the things that strikes me as you know, just as a fan, more or less, is the fact that you can hear the influences of you guys' various projects of the past. You know, the things that you're known for: Rainbow, Deep Purple, et cetera, et cetera. But you can also hear some of the lesser known stuff that you guys have done as well. Like, an example to me is Fire and Ice. I listened to Fire and Ice the first time, and I thought it was a Lost Blue Murder track, because it really had that combination of Carmine and Tony with that thumping underbelly, but yet at the same time, the I don't know, the flow or the rhythm that you were bringing vocally kind of reminded me of the stuff that you did with Glenn Hughes. You know, so it's unique how everything kind of works with like the whole embodiment of you guys' career. Is that just how it came to be, or did you guys kind of look and say, well, you know, we want to kind of remind people of what we used to do or what we've done in the past, or how did that actually all work out stylistically?
Well, that's a good question, and it certainly makes sense. And sometimes we referred to those, for example, Carmine would say to Tony, yeah, I left a lot of space over here like we did in Blue Murder, you know, or I did this over here, or I would reference, you know, well, hey, a little bit more Rainbow over here, you know, only because these are the references that we are the sum total of our parts. Mm-hmm. I think no one can get away from their inspirations. No one can get away from their past. People try, but it's very difficult to run from the past. You have to incorporate everything that all your experience and put it forward. And that's what's happening in Rated X. It's everybody's cumulative experience being put forward in one way or another. And the more you listen to this record, the more you're going to hear those influences popping up. You know, whether it's Purple, Rainbow, Blue Murder, Cactus, Vanilla Fudge, whatever it is. You know, The Farm, you name it. Sure. That's what you're going to hear.
Absolutely, and you definitely do. Now, creatively, certainly you get three guys that have had big success in the past. They all have a specific way of creating their music. You get them all three in a room, a lot of times that doesn't always work. You know, it obviously worked in the end product for you guys, but when you were actually hashing it out, you know, recording the music, I don't know if you're in a studio or if you guys did the MP3 trading back and forth to find the songs, but when you were hashing it out, was it more or less difficult than if you were to, say, do your own record or projects that you've done in the past?
Actually, we weren't in the same room, which is remarkable. We were actually, in some cases, in different countries. Wow. Not only in the United States, but in different countries. Italy, Greece, whatever. The files were being sent back and forth, and technology was working for us because we were using Skype, texts, cell phones, FaceTimes, you name it. Right. So we were in constant touch with each other that way. And, for example, Carmine would do a track, and he knew exactly what to leave open for Tony. Tony, having played with him before, obviously knew exactly where to go. and Carmine would actually reference it and say, okay, this is what we did here. I got it. Boom, he was off to the races. And when it finally came down to me laying vocals over it, it was so easy to really just let loose and sing over this because everybody is just so solid. And the only way I think this happened is because you had a set of really seasoned professionals doing this. I don't think newcomers or even, a certain amount of experiences is going to teach that. You really need to know. You need to be a sort of a veteran of this to know how to do that and to anticipate what's going to happen next and where it's going to go. And everybody just sort of came together like that, remarkably so. And we weren't really sure as we were going along because all we had was rough mixes. And we said, well, it sounds like it's going in the right direction. But until Pat Reagan, he was mixing the Mr. Big record at the time, and finally he could sort of literally squeeze us in to about a week, less than a week of mixes. We started to hear the separation of the frequencies. We started to hear individuals who was playing what. And astoundingly, amazingly, everybody was sort of playing on their own, but yet together and not in the same room, which makes this even more magical in the chemistry of what we were doing.
Do you like recording that way? Because, I mean, you spent so many years in the old-fashioned way, I'll call it now, but, where get in a room, you come in with demos, you get in a room for 3 to 6 months, and you hash it out, and half the time you end up rewriting half of the material that you came in with anyway. Now it almost seems like you've got to be much more prepared and much more focused to do it in this manner.
Yes, especially we had a small budget. I mean, small. Very, very small. No one would even believe what we were actually given for the budget on this, and we had home studios and whatever favors from other studio owners, whatever we needed, and we made it happen this way. We made it happen out of sheer will and effort. We had sometimes corrupted files that we were faced with because we were transferring them overseas here and there, and certain times things would be like a minuscule iota of a second off, and we had timing problems. We had to fix that. So at first we were like, really, well, let's not get discouraged. Let's just keep pushing through. And we thought we had the rated X curse because certain things would just be presented, obviously, obstacles in our way. And, there's one philosophy. It's how bad do you want it? And we wanted it that bad, so we kept persevering and pushing through. And even with the tragedy of Carl happening, we got through that, and we came out the other side. And I'm sure we made all of us proud, Carl included. And this is part of his recovery, is hearing this record and feeling so good about it and what he's done. And the response of the fans saying he is a true guitar star. This is all part of a healing process for all of us.
Great.
And we're very proud of this record.
Certainly.
So, yes.
Well, Joe, I'm going to jump away from this band necessarily. I'm not necessarily referencing this band, but I'm certainly referencing guys in your career, and you'll know who, so I don't need to name them. But you've worked with some temperamental guys in the past, to say the least. And I've always wondered what is the secret to dealing with those types of people to get them to be at their creative best? Because at least two of the guys, the two most famous guys that you've worked with that are well known for being that way are also known to be creative geniuses, but that's not necessarily easy to work with for a guy like you. How was it that you are able to deal with that yourself, to get them to give their creative best when you're working with them?
Well, that's absolutely true what you're saying. Two of the most quote-unquote difficult guitar players and two of the best in the world. But it's my philosophy that you just need to go in and absolutely deal with perfection. I think these guys are looking for that. They're looking for somebody who can stand up to it. And if you don't deliver, and you can't stand up to it and deliver your end of the goods, then you've got no chance. But once you prove that you can write the songs with them, you can sing them, you can deliver it, you can perform with it, they're on your side, they're on your team, because that's the proof of it, I think. And it takes a lot of strength, it takes a lot of strategy, it takes a lot of psychology. But for me, it was, I think, once said that I was like a lion tamer. I got a whip and a chair, and I went in the ring, you know, and
Right.
that was kind of like how it happened, because you get tested constantly by these guys, and they're constantly throwing stuff at you to see if you're tough enough to take it, if you're strong enough to overcome it, and if you can even make it better. And that's what I did in these situations. And the Odyssey record with Yngwie stands the test of time. All the Rainbow stuff's the test of time, including Slaves and Masters of Deep Purple.
Right.
And that's what the secret is. The secret is you got to be just as strong.
Sure, definitely. Well, Joe, the industry today, very different animal than what you came up with. What does a new band, and I guess a new band is probably not the correct term, but a new entity trying to establish itself like Rated X hope for commercially today? Do you go in with any kind of expectation, or do you just leave that on Frontiers and go out and just look to kick ass at every show and, you know, and with all the fans that hear it?
Well, honestly, it is a new band, because we ran into problems about 6 months ago, before the record was even done. We were trying to book this as a band, and we were running into problems like with promoters saying, well, we know Joe, we know everybody individually, we don't know them together. Okay? So now you're back to new band status. And, you know, you can't rest on your laurels. You can't rest on the hype that has come before you, even though it should be a big asset for these promoters to book us,
Sure.
Or even for the fans to check us out. But at the same time, you've got to come up with the stuff. You really got to have the goods. You've got to have the material. And I think now that the record has finally come out, Frontiers is giving us some great promotion. We're taking advantage of everything we can, and we want to get this record out to the people because we feel that they, as always, it's the fans, it's the people out there who will support and love us and create a demand and put a fire into this particular band and say, we want to see these guys live.
Right.
And I might add that we can do exactly this record live. There are no studio tricks. There's just 5 guys playing their butts off and going for it, you know, with I guess you would call it a melodic hard rock genre, but I'm not really sure what any of that means anymore. To me, it's just great. It's just great songs and great interludes in the middle of these songs with players, performances, material with integrity, character, and professionalism.
Sure. Now, you see the new bands, Joe. You see them, you know, today. Do you think that they take advantage of the lessons on how to succeed and how to grow an audience and, you know, the things that the bands from the rock and metal bands from the late 70s through probably about the 90s all did so well? It just seems like it went really well right up till 2000, and then the whole new crowd just doesn't get it. Do you think that these new bands do look at the past and take cues from you guys, or not at all?
Well, I think they certainly took musical cues from us. I had one journalist really point out all the cues that they take from us and how influential each and every one of us in our own right has been. Mm-hmm. And I was astounded to really think about it that way, because I think, for example, some of the Rainbow stuff or the Purple stuff, you know, that was kind of like the father to the alternative, with the half steps and the fourths that they use on the guitar. These riffs, they're really all coming off of that. And, okay, so they detune a guitar. No big deal. It's been done before, too. So to make a long story short, they not only take their musical presence from it, but they also look back and see what we did and how we got to be popular. It's not easy today for any real new band to come out.
Sure. And
make it because of the overload and the music. Everyone is inundated with too much information via the internet. There's got to be a few real gems underneath all of the crap. That's the only way I can say it.
Right.
There's everybody with a computer today thinks that they are entitled to be heard. And I wish you all the best of luck. But if you don't have talent, you're not going to surface. And that's just the way it is. People want to hear people with talent. It doesn't give the right, just because you have a computer and you know how to record something, the right to become famous. You got to work for it. We did. We had to work for it. We had to have blood, sweat, and tears, and sacrifice, and dedication,
right,
and discipline, and that's what you need for this. And it's never changed.
Right. Do you think this is one that we always talk about on the show, and I'm a firm believer that things like Twitter and Facebook, I know it is a great way for people to, quickly let people know what they're doing, but in my eyes personally, I think it's also very detrimental to a band. And the reason I think that is because back in the, I grew up in the 80s, so 82 to 90 was basically my music buying peak. And what made me buy records half the time was that little bit of mystery about the bands. I just didn't know, all I knew was the page and a half that I saw once a month in Hit Parade or about Rainbow or Motley Crue or whoever, Metallica, whoever it was. Just seems like now all the bands are, directly interacting with the fans, daily instead of, more channeled reaction.
And there's no mystique.
Yeah, that's it. It's just like it's now everybody's just your buddy, and there's no real reason to support it anymore.
Well, I'd like to preface this by saying, look, I'm all about meet and greets. I'm all about being in touch with fans, to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. But I always believed that you needed a private life, and you need to have a certain amount of anonymity in that private life so that you can actually put your feet on the ground and be a person again, and not just an artist all the time. And I think that this has gone too far in some cases. I don't think people need to know what I have for breakfast.
Right.
I don't think it's interesting at all. I don't think I need to say I ate a bran muffin or I love you all so much all the time. I mean, it gets to be pathetic after a while. And I know a lot of people might not agree with what I'm saying, but I think there are a lot of people who do agree with what I'm saying. And this is who I am, so to speak. I really have this philosophy that I'm not trying to be distant, but at the same time, I think it's completely unnecessary. When there's something valid to say, say it. When you have a valid opinion or a valid a statement that you need to make it. But this constant chatter, this constant meaningless, I did this and I'm with so-and-so, and this name dropping and all of this is just absolutely pathetic to me. I find there's no validity in it. It doesn't mean you're more popular. It doesn't make you any better at what you do. And that mystique that you're talking about, I enjoyed that mystique from the heroes of my day, mm-hmm. and still today. I don't want to know that they're that human. I want to keep a certain amount of level of ideology or an idol in a way. I want to look up to these people. And when I find out their habits are worse than mine, it tears them down a lot.
Sure.
It really does. And I just think that there's a certain amount of privacy that we need to have. And I think I'm very verbal with the fans, and I've been accused of not making my own posts and things like that. Well, I'd need three of me to keep up with that. That's why I have assistants and I have a staff and I have people using my words that they can post, but they're my words. But I don't necessarily have to physically post them.
Right.
Well, what's the point of that? Joe doesn't, post his stuff anyway. I mean, why would you take issue with that? If I'm saying what I want to say and I'm giving you news and I'm giving you ideas, what's the point? Well, it's very important that I actually text it myself. Some of the things I do, and some I don't. But what's the issue with that now? Do you like as if that's all we have to do all day? I would never be able to create music. I'd never be able to create good music anyway. Everything would be second rate. Mm-hmm. I have a certain amount of integrity I've kept through my career, and that's the way I want it to be.
Sure.
And I have a certain amount of privacy I need to keep in order to have a healthy life.
Right.
If you know my every move, I really think there's something wrong with that today for anybody.
Right.
Famous or non-famous.
And the proof is kind of in the pudding. If you look at pretty much every band that is like the top of the food chain of the last 30 years, like the bands that have stood the test of time and they are the top of the food chain. I'm talking about Metallica, U2, Bruce Springsteen, Who, Zeppelin, etc. None of these guys are what you would consider to be social media great. You know,
Yeah.
they share enough to let you know when the new record or the new DVD's coming out or when they're playing an exclusive gig or something like that. But you really don't know. I mean, I don't know what James. I know nothing about James Hetfield, and I'm the biggest Metallica fan there is. So you know that's that's kind of the point.
I agree. You know, and they do, like myself. We share important news, whether it's political or humanitarian issues, charity issues, whatever. They share all that, but at the same time, they don't tell you they had a bran muffin for breakfast.
Right.
They don't go into when they did their laundry, when they're walking the dog.
Right.
Are you kidding me? What is this? What has come to this? What has this got to do with music, rock and roll, or anything? I don't get it. I will never subscribe to that much of it. I understand what social media is necessary. We're doing promotion now for Rated X. We are all over social media, and we're going to have a Facebook chat in the near future after the holiday, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's all fine and good, but to be available and accessible all the time, who can do that?
Right.
Who?
Yeah.
And why should you do that? And you're right, all of the big stars, all of the big guys never do any of it.
Right.
And they're still there. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because, as Aerosmith said, let the music do the talking.
Yeah, and that's very, very much the truth, man. Well, the music's definitely doing the talking with the new project, man. It's called Rated X. People can get it now, right? I know it's on Spotify. Can they buy it now too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can do iTunes. You can go on Amazon, get the CD. I personally like hard copies, and you can absolutely, or you can just download a track, or the whole record.
Right.
Absolutely, no problem. Whatever you prefer. I like to read who did what, where it was recorded, who produced it, the thank yous. I like all that stuff. I guess I'm old school, but that's the information I like to have.
Sure.
That's not available necessarily on social media.
Absolutely, man. Well, dude, as a tradition on the show, and you've done this before, we always pick a closing track, either something from the record or something from your past, and maybe tell us a story about it. So what would you like us to wrap the interview up with?
Well, I want to stay with Rated X here, Chris. I really think so. And I'd really like to play a track that I believe is our quote-unquote Kashmir, the way Zeppelin had a Kashmir. I think Journey to Lhasa is almost a 7-minute cut, and I would like to end with that because I want to show the people that this is not just some kind of commercial band. We are really deep into the tracks, and this is a deep track.
Excellent. Well, let's check it out right now. This is brand new stuff. It's Rated X right here on your Classic Metal Show.